guys, Sandra here from Create in Spain. Today's video is one of your favourites. It's a hints and tips one, and I've got a couple of hints in here that you may not have come across before. Right, the first one, sometimes you need to draw a border for whatever reason, and it needs to be a certain size. Now this is one of my least favourite things to do normally because it's just a pain in the neck lining up dots and drawing them with a ruler and a pen. So there is a way around this. One pen, doesn't make any difference what sort of pen you got. What you want is a piece of card that has a definite square edge to it. So it can be rectangular, it can be square, but it needs to be a proper rectangle or a square. You really do want that to be the case. You also want a piece of foam, and this is so that you can put a hole in your piece of card. Now in this particular case, all I've done is put a little hole here. It's no set distance, but you want to work out how deep you want your border to be. In this case, it's approximately 1 centimetre. Now you could say, well, this is quite good because you can get your pen and you can line it up with the edge of your card or whatever it is that you're doing, and you can put a dot in there and you can move it and you can put more dots. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing it that way. What you do is you want a piece of foam, again with a straight edge, and you put some double-sided tape on it and you can stick it down temporarily to your work surface, like so. And you can butt your piece of card or your paper up to it. Now the other thing that you can do is you can take your piece of card with the hole and you can butt that to it. Now if I put this down here, I mean if need be you can actually tape your paper or stick it temporarily down to the surface if you need to do that. But you then take your pen, you put your pen in the hole and you simply draw your line, like so. And you have a nice straight line without any great difficulty. Now you can buy special rulers to do this, but if you haven't got one, don't want to buy one, don't need to use it very often, then this works really nicely as a temporary method of doing it. Now, for those of you who are into sewing, I recently had to sew about 30 meters of fabric or something, stupid amount of fabric with regular hems on them. And they weren't just narrow 1 centimeter hems. And I was doing it at this craft desk, which is only 60 centimeters wide back to front and has got a wall directly in front of it. And I had to have all the fabric to my left for use on my sewing machine. Nightmare. However, I did work out a little trick for making it a bit easier for myself, and it works on a similar vein. Pretend this piece of paper towel is my fabric and I needed to do, I don't know, a 3 centimeter or a 5 centimeter hem on it. What I did was I took a piece of card, which was double the width that I needed it to be, and folded it in half. What I then did was folded over my hem to where I needed it to be, literally just put it inside my piece of card. So this went in like so, and I had it underneath my foot on my sewing machine, and I was using this as a guide in order to keep my seam, or my hem I should say, the same width. Believe me, it worked. The fabric that I was sewing was basically a nightmare because it was Teflon coated. It would skew off to one side, it couldn't go behind the sewing machine properly. It was a nightmare, but this made it an awful lot easier to do. But the other thing that I did was I used a strip, this strip in fact, of foam, and I stuck it to my machine bed. So I worked out where my needle had to go, whether it was here or here, depending on what it was I was sewing at the time. Now if I was sewing this type of hem, I would simply make sure that I knew that I wanted my seam line to go there, for example. I would put this so that the needle was lined up in the correct place, and then I took this and I stuck it onto my sewing machine bed, and I used this as a guide. So I would pull this down about 8 inches or so and get it all nicely tucked in, and my needle would be going up and down, and I would simply use that as its guide to guide it through. That made it doable for me without sticking pins in it, because obviously with that amount of fabric and it's curled over and it's sat on my lap, it's on the floor, it's on the desk, I didn't want pins all the way through it. I could do it without either sticking it down with sticky tape or pinning it or tacking it. And that's how I did it. And all I had to do was to do a different piece of card for different widths. So I had one which was 5 centimeters. I had another one which was 3. My hems were perfect. My next tip is regards pens in your cutting machine holders. This is a very cheap biro, but it's unusual in that it has 4 different colours. Now it's unusual because I haven't come across a biro which has these colours in it before now. So I have a purple one. It's not been used yet. I have a green. It's a lime green. I think it's going to take a little bit of running to get through there. Yeah, there we go. We have pink. I've got 2 of these pens, I just hadn't used this one before. There we go, so we have pink. And we have a blue one. They had little wax caps on, that's why they weren't working. And I couldn't see that because I've got my glasses on, I couldn't see the little wax caps. Okay. Dear, dear. So there we go, we have blue. Now the reason I say this is quite useful is because if you put one of these in the pen holder in your cutting machine, you can use the different colours at different points in your design simply by pausing the machine and pressing a different lever down. And you don't have to take the pen out and change it for another one, so it just saves you time and gives you the chance to do some different effects. Also, it's quite handy if, for example, you're drawing flowers and leaves, you can draw the flower part in, I don't know, pink or whatever, and the leaves in green, but you still don't have to change the pen. Have you ever tried cutting out a nice delicate cut with your cutter, only to find that you've torn it when you remove it from the mat? Well, there is a nice solution for this, and it simply involves using a spray glue to stick your card to acetate before you cut it. Then you cut through the entire lot, and this makes this panel a lot stronger. You're not likely to break it when you take it from the mat, and it just feels and looks that much better. This is one of my favourite craft tips, to have a white ceramic tile on hand. Now I've got quite a few of these and I've got them in different sizes. This is a 6-inch, I have an 8-inch as well. And what I've done is I've backed it with some felt. Now you can use a craft foam on the back of it or felt, whatever you have to hand. I use double-sided tape normally to stick it on. The reason for this is because when you're colour blending, whether you are painting, whether you are inking or anything else, a white surface shows you the true colour. Now you could say, well, you can have a plate. Yes, you could have a plate and it could be a white plate, but a plate is probably not going to be flat, and this is easier to clean off because it is flat. The other thing is, even if you do use a plate, I still recommend that you put something underneath it and keep it for your craft use. Now the reason for that is because if you have a work surface that might get scratched, and damaged, it's not fun. So you want to put something soft underneath so you can move this around. You can just shove it to one side if you need to, and it's not going to come to any harm. It helps protect it from breakage anyway, and it's just a good idea to have something nice and soft on the back. But it's great for using for colour blending, for putting out little dabs of glue, for testing your alcohol marker colours, for example, because you can put it on there and just wipe it off afterwards. This next tip is one I developed a whole video on a while ago, but I'm mentioning it because if you didn't see that particular video, it's a very useful tip. This is some Arteza gouache. Now, gouache is like a watercolour, only chalky basically. And this can be a very useful alternative to your Distress oxide pads. If, for example, you want to use a colour and you don't have a pad in the right colour, or it's run dry, or maybe you're just strapped for cash and you don't want to buy an ink pad. Take a little bit of a gouache paint if you have it already. Obviously, you won't need to buy any. And add just the tiniest little drop of glycerin. Now, the glycerin extends the drying time of the paint. You can use a damp brush if you find the mix too dry. That will depend on the brand of your paint, basically. Some are drier than others. And you simply use your blending brush in the same way that you would any other way. And you just go ahead and do your blending. There we go. Nice and smooth, no problem at all. Now, the advantage of this is that you can, if you're like me and you have a whole set of these things, you will have metallic colours and pearlized colours in your collection as well. But basically, if you've got 60 of those, then you're going to have any colour that you want. And of course, you can mix them on your palette as well. So if you want a purple and you've only got blue and pink, you can still make purple. My next tip is a DIY version of Pixie Spray. Now, I have this container here. It's a spray container, which is pretty standard, easy enough to buy. And I previously had water in it, and I thought, a lot of people are using Pixie Spray, which is not as toxic as an aerosol temporary glue spray, I guess. And I thought to myself, I wonder if it's possible to make it up. So I thought about what it probably contained and then went to work. So I put in a small amount of water in this container, or at least I had a small amount of water in it already. And all I did was I added some Tack It over and over. And I reckon it's probably about 50% dilution. So 1 part Tack It over, 1 part water. Now, what I suggest you do is that you start off with some glue, add a little amount of water. Don't have the spray nozzle in the bottle at the time because you don't want the pure glue getting in there. Just put your thumb over the top and shake it around a bit, and it dissolves really easily in water. So, in order to test this out, I have spritzed the back of this design here, which is a metal paper design, with my fake glue stuff. And I'm going to put it down on here. And there we go. It is stuck. Now, the beauty of it is that because it is so thin, because it dilutes properly, it should spray out of here in just the same way as it sprays out of the bottle when you buy the genuine stuff. But it means that I don't have to try getting Pixie Spray. It comes off. It is still slightly tacky. So if I put this onto a waxed paper, I could keep it and use it again. So for doing things like stencils and stuff, this is a really good method of doing it. And whatever you need to do, if you need to put something down temporarily, that would do the job quite nicely. If you've got something delicate like this, it's far easier just to give it a quick spritz than it is to go around and put temporary glue or whatever it is all over the back of it. My next tip involves getting your hands on some of these things. I'm sorry for the light, the sun's coming in through my window here. Now, these are tiny little clips. There we go. They are stainless steel and they have a little hook on them. Now, these are designed for actually using on curtains, so you can basically clip your curtain and then hang it over a wire or a cord if you so wish. But they have uses in the craft room because these particular clips are extremely strong. Now, I will warn you that they have very sharp teeth in here, and you do not want to put this on your finger because it will go through your skin, I would think. That is how tough these are. So here is a 6-inch tile, okay? I am going to put it on there and I can pick it up with this. And it takes some shaking to get it off. So for most things that you want to hang up in the craft room, this is going to be perfectly adequate. Now, because it has an actual hook here, normally you would want to have some kind of suspension cord for it to hang from. But if you wanted to, you could get rid of the hook entirely and you could use a tough glue and put these on a board or on the edge of a shelf, for example. You could actually use these to hang up things like scissors and rulers because, you know, they're not going to drop off of that. You'd need a pretty weighty scissor for it to fall off. So your smaller scissors you could do quite happily. You can use it to grip onto your rulers and hang those. Different things that are likely to just be in a jumble in a drawer or whatever. If there's somewhere else you want to put them, then you may find that is a reasonable idea. Now, I bought these actually for some exterior curtains for a pergola, but they were relatively cheap. I think they were somewhere in the region of €10 for 100 of them. So if you're looking for some really good grips, I can recommend this because they are a lot stronger in spring than a lot of the craft grips are. Okay, on with the next tip. If you have a cutting machine or an embossing machine that takes this type of quite heavy duty cutting mat and you want to replace it, what you can do is you can use 2 layers of a self-healing mat, the sort of ones that you normally get in craft shops but you can buy online quite cheaply. And if you have a very large mat, as indeed I do, you might decide that you can cut a piece off of either side of it and still be able to use your mat quite adequately. If you look very carefully on this edge, I believe that that is 2 layers of plastic stuck together. So basically what you're doing is the same as what the manufacturer did in the first place. You will need a very sharp Stanley knife in order to cut it down to size. But other than that, no problem at all. You'll have replaced your mat and it'll be just as good as new. The other thing that you can do if you need to have one which is thicker than that, you can use the original as a base and stick another layer on top, either on one side or even both, if you need to have an extra thick plate for your embossing or cutting machine. I recommend using a good quality double-sided tape to stick them together. It's far easier than using a glue and you'll know that they're instantly stuck. My next tip is a safety one. Many of us in craft rooms have very sharp items which we need to dispose of, be it machine blades, be it needles, pins, whatever. I have an old spice shaker container and all I do is I pop them in through the holes, close it up, and when it's full I can dispose of the entire lot. Now you'll notice I have some syringes in here, and these were syringes that I cleaned out with alcohol, and in fact I've used them for various craft uses. So put them all in here, dispose of them safely when it's absolutely full. My last tip is about identifying paints. Now I tend to like to store my paints upright in a plastic container like this. Now the first thing I've done obviously is I've put colour swatches of the paint on top. But out of those colours, some of those colours are metallics or pearlized colours, and it isn't easy to tell all the time from the top swatch whether that is the case. And so I've devised a way of making it pretty obvious. So this would be my normal colour swatch with just a little paper thing on there. What I've done with my metallics is I've put a little blob of UV gel on the top. Now this happens to be a craft gel, but you could just put one of those clear sticky door bumpers or something like that over the top. Whatever it is, it has to be clear, translucent, so that you can see the colour. But I know from simply touching the top, even if it's not instantly obvious when I look at the container, that these are my metallic colours. It's a nice, easy way of telling the difference. So if I have a quick look in my box and I'm not sure and just feel the top, yeah, that's the metallic one. There we go. That's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed these quick tips and hints, and I'll see you again soon. Take care now.